bison once roamed in unimaginable numbers across most of the continent. Though nearly eliminated from the wild, they have recovered and remain a living symbol of wild America. Join us in Yellowstone National Park for a hike in bison country as we make our own adventure on Trailside.
Trailside is brought to you by Chevy Trucks, right at home in the wild.
Yellowstone was established in 1872 as the world's first national park, primarily to preserve its unique geological features. The creation of the park also created an immense wildlife reserve. Today, Yellowstone still harbors all of its native wildlife, including a herd of wild bison that has roamed free here since prehistoric times. Although there's no longer tens of millions of bison in North America, bison still roam in Yellowstone. I'll be joined by Yellowstone naturalist Nancy Proctor. She spent the past 10 years teaching people about Yellowstone, 6 with the National Park Service, and the last 4 as an instructor with the Yellowstone Association Institute. Good morning, Nancy.
Hey, good morning, Brian, and welcome to Yellowstone National Park.
Oh, it's great to be here.
All right. Well, I hope you're ready to do some hiking today because we got some bison to find.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to that. Now, what's the difference between a bison and a buffalo?
Well, you know, the names are interchangeable, but the correct scientific term is bison. Somewhere along the line, people started calling them buffalo. And I've heard 2 theories about that. One is that French trappers coming in here thought that they looked like domestic cattle. And since the French word for beef cow is boeuf, it got lengthened into buffalo. And the other theory is that early explorers saw a resemblance to the bison here with water buffalo. But, you know, either way, whether you call them bison or buffalo, you're going to be understood.
Well, I can't wait to get out there and see some bison.
All right. You want to see where we're headed?
Sure.
All right. Hey, Brian, give me a hand here.
Sure.
I want to show you, here's where we're at right now in the park, but where we're heading today is way out there in the Lamar Valley. You know, there's 3 major herds of bison in the park, and one of them reliably hangs out in this area.
So how big is the park?
Oh, it's huge. It's 2.2 million acres. And there's no way we're going to be able to see all of this park in one day. But the reason we're heading out there is bison are going to be where the grass is, and lots of grass out in the Lamar. And it is also a spectacular day hike for us.
You should carry a lot of stuff for a single day hike.
Well, you know, Brian, I want to be prepared. There's a lot of changeable weather here in Yellowstone, so I'm going to carry wind layers and rain gear. I'm going to carry extra layers for warmth, hat and gloves, and also want to be prepared for the sun. So I'm going to carry a hat and sunscreen, both for me and for my lips. I also want to make sure that I've got enough food, so I've got enough energy on the trail. In addition to lunch, I'm going to carry a lot of extra little snacks that I can eat while I'm on the trail. And you know, a couple of the most important things, one of them is bear spray, because we are in bear country here in Yellowstone. And maybe most importantly is my first aid kit. I'm never going to leave home without it. I've got all the resources I need to be prepared for an emergency in the backcountry. And ever see one of these?
What, a bandana? Sure.
Yeah, Brian, it's more than just a bandana. This is what I call a first responder cheat sheet. You know, if you've ever encountered an emergency in the backcountry, it's kind of like your brain freezes up immediately. Well, this is our cheat sheet to help us work through how to deal with any emergency. And so it is more than just a bandana.
It's a smart idea is what it is.
It's a great idea.
Where's your water at?
Well, my water is right here in my pack. It's already built into the pack with a tube system so that I can drink while I'm on the trail. Don't have to stop and take out my water bottle. It keeps me well hydrated.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Brian, we got lots of miles to go today, so let's get going.
Okay. As I understand it, Yellowstone is the only place in the lower 48 states where bison have continuously roamed since, what, prehistoric times?
That's right, Brian. When Lewis and Clark were exploring the American West in the early 1800s, there were up to 30 million bison roaming the continent all the way from the Pacific Ocean to the Appalachians. Within 100 years, the bison population dwindled to around 1,000 animals.
From 30 million down to 1,000?
That's right. But it wasn't just one thing. There were a number of factors. Introduction of exotic diseases, expansion of cattle ranching, and finally, the systematic slaughter by market hunters.
So why were the bison able to survive here and nowhere else?
In the 1800s, Yellowstone wasn't exactly an easy place to get to. And after the big herds on the Great Plains were eliminated, those market hunters started moving into the Yellowstone area to finish the job. And they did it with remarkable efficiency.
So I thought hunting was prohibited in Yellowstone.
Yes, but the laws had no teeth, and early park administrators had no budget to effectively patrol. Things actually got so bad that by 1886, Congress brought in the U.S. Army to restore Yellowstone to law and order. But even with the Army present, the poaching continued.
So why wasn't anybody able to stop the slaughter?
There were sport hunters like Teddy Roosevelt who realized that without wildlife, there would be no hunting. These folks were instrumental in forming some of the first wildlife conservation organizations. That was the real beginning.
So that was the turnaround.
Well, a little bit later, 1894, there was a magazine writer who happened to be visiting Yellowstone at the very time that a notorious poacher was apprehended in the act of removing some of the park's last wild bison. The article that he published created such a national uproar that within a short period of time, the first law protecting Yellowstone's wildlife was passed. Hey, Brian, look how it's changing. We're coming into bear country.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of change in the terrain.
Well, it's really unlikely that we'll encounter a bear in the backcountry, and less likely that we'll be injured by one. But because the potential consequences of a bear attack can be so severe, we really need to do everything possible to avoid that situation.
Like what?
Well, we're going to make lots of noise on the trail, and we shouldn't hike alone or go off trail or go near food sources for bears. And keep your eyes out for recent sign of bear like scat and tracks. But if we do happen to encounter a bear, just remember 3 things.
What 3 things is that?
Stay calm, think clearly, and don't run.
Or be the fastest runner in the pack.
Brian, no, don't run.
Okay.
Keep your eyes peeled through here.
Yeah, what's up?
We're in the territory of one of Yellowstone's wolf packs, the Leopold pack.
What's a Leopold pack?
The Leopolds are a gray wolf pack. Wolves were native to this area, but by the 1930s, the park had eliminated them because the thinking at the time was that predators like wolves were not only a threat to people, but also to the good animals. They've recently been reintroduced, and the fact that they're surviving is a great indicator that the Yellowstone ecosystem is vibrant and healthy.
Now, you always hear about the problems with bears and wolves. Do you ever have any problems with bison?
Surprisingly enough, more visitors to Yellowstone are injured by bison than any other animal. They look at them like they're this slow, dumb, harmless animal. but they can run up to 30 miles an hour. And I'll bet that's twice as much as you and me put together.
Oh, I know it is. So what's the safest thing to do around a bison?
Well, the smartest thing we can do is keep our distance. Brian, this is Geode Creek we're walking along now.
Geode is in those rocks you find, and when you crack them open, they're hollow on the inside, and they're full of these real pretty rocks like amethyst and citrine.
Boy, I wish I had a good answer for you, but I can tell you that we're seeing this creek at a great time of year. Look how high it is. This is all spring runoff, snowmelt coming down. This is yet another great place to watch wildlife in the park. Mornings and evenings when they come down to the water for a tasty drink. Tell you what, Brian, you got longer legs, so why don't you go first?
Okay.
Brian, what do you got here?
Some bones of some kind.
Well, not just any bones. I think you found an elk carcass.
How can you tell?
Take a look at the hoof. Elk are ungulates, which means they have a cloven hoof. You see that split down the middle of it? Yeah. That's a good indication. Hey, this is quite a find.
What do you think killed it? Old age or a predator?
Well, I'm no expert. Let's take a look at the jawbone that you got. Look at the teeth. You see how mowed down they are and craggy along the edges? It almost looks like there's abscesses and teeth missing. That's probably really good indication that this was an animal that was just having a hard time even feeding anymore. And winter is one of the hardest times for animals. In order to get to grasses, they got to dig down through snow. They have to deal with long nights and cold weather. Boy, by winter's end, they're in pretty miserable shape.
Yeah, I don't know, though. You look at the ribs, they look like they've been gnawed upon or something.
Well, they definitely have. Little critters will gnaw on these bones in order to get to minerals and calcium. But when an animal dies, it literally becomes a buffet table for predators and scavengers alike. Everybody comes in and just waits their turn in order to be able to feed on it.
What's the chances of me taking this jawbone home with me?
Brian, there is no chance of you taking that jawbone home. This carcass still has some good pickings on it, and it's all part of the web of life in Yellowstone.
Oh, okay. You know, I keep seeing bones scattered all over the trail. Do you ever see the whole thing? Like, where's the rest of this guy at?
Well, you know, when animals are working on a carcass, it's not like they're all feeding at the same dinner table all the time. They're scattering bones everywhere. And this was one big boy. This is a bison skull.
Oh, really? He must have been huge from the size of the skull. How big do they get?
They could be 6 feet at the shoulder, and bull bison can weigh up to 2,000 pounds.
Oh, my goodness, that's the size of my truck. What do they eat to get so big?
Grass, grass, and even more grass. They're the lawnmowers of Yellowstone. And with 4 stomachs like a cow, they're able to eke out every last little bit of nutrition.
I know you said both the male and the female have these horns. Do they both have that hump?
Yeah, they do.
What is that, like fat storage, or?
No, it's actually all bone. You know how you can feel the one that kind of sticks out at the base of your neck? Well, on the bison, those bones project out more than a foot.
What's the purpose, though?
Well, muscles attach to those bones that enable their head to hang really low to the ground. That allows them to eat while they're walking. It also allows them to swing their head to shovel snow during the winter time. Or, in a defensive position, they can also swing their head back and forth.
You know, these are fantastic creatures. What'd you find, Nancy?
Hey, check out this bubbling action. These are gases coming up from thermal vents. You know, we're on the edge of an old thermal area here in the park. Take a look at that formation.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't we head that way?
Okay. So is this an old geyser?
No, everybody always thinks Yellowstone is just about Old Faithful and the geysers. This is another type of thermal feature, a travertine formation.
A traver what?
Travertine. The rock is limestone, rich in calcium carbonate. And when hot water starts rising up through it, it dissolves the calcium carbonate and leaves on the top a precipitate called travertine. Take a look at the layering. I can't imagine how long it took to form this.
What is that smell?
Kind of like rotten eggs?
Yeah.
That's sulfur. It may be dormant, but it's not extinct.
It's so thick you can taste it.
Yeah.
Can we get a closer look by crossing over here?
No, you know, we could really harm it by walking on it. It's really pretty fragile. Let's go back the way we came.
Okay. So is that one of the herds you were talking about?
Well, this is one of the small herds of bulls out here in the Lamar Valley. Grab my binocs out of the top pocket if you want a better look.
Okay, thanks.
Can you imagine what it must have been like at one time to have watched thousands of bison in a single herd out here roaming?
Oh, I bet it was an incredible sight.
Well, it had to have been, you know, but this herd we're watching today probably isn't much different than what we would have seen in 1902, when there were only 23 wild bison remaining in Yellowstone.
You're kidding. Well, how'd that herd survive?
Well, they were saved from extinction right here in the Lamar Valley. 21 bison were brought in from private herds and pretty much managed like a cattle ranch. Things really changed in the 1960s when we started to allow nature to take its own course, not just for bison, but for all of Yellowstone's wildlife.
So how's the herd doing now?
Pretty good in some respects, not so good in others. The bison population has expanded and it's now about 4,000 strong. But more animals need more habitat, especially in winter. And when there's deep snow, it drives bison to lower elevations outside the park in order to find good grass.
So what's the problem there?
Well, bison are caught in the middle of a human conflict over a disease called brucellosis.
Brucellosis, you got me on that one.
Brucellosis is a bacterial disease that, if transmitted from wild bison to domestic cattle, can cause the cows to abort their first calves. Naturally, neighboring ranchers are pretty concerned over this, to the point that a prior agreement between the Park Service and the state of Montana allowed over 1,000 bison to be shot or sent to slaughter a few winters back. But the irony of it is that there never has been a documented case of transmission of brucellosis from a wild bison to a domestic cow.
So why don't they just change the agreement?
Well, a new agreement after that was forged between the Park Service and the state of Montana that will maintain a free roaming herd of bison in Yellowstone and address the concerns of the ranchers. But the reality of it is, Brian, that there will be more hard winters and more bison will be killed.
Can we get a closer look?
Yeah, but let's head out this way and then around.
Okay.
Brian, this might be a good place to settle in. These bison are looking fairly content.
You know, I've noticed a lot of different coloration, like reds mixed in with the brown.
Yeah, this time of year, late spring, early summer, they're starting to shed that mangy-looking winter coat that they have. I mean, look around. This stuff is everywhere.
Oh, yeah, I've noticed it everywhere.
Yeah, big, thick winter fur coat they put on. You wouldn't want to have to wear that all summer if you didn't have to.
No, I wouldn't. So how do you tell the male from the female or the cow from the bull?
Well, both bulls and cows have horns, but generally speaking, the bull is a larger animal. I think what we're looking at there is a small herd of bulls.
So where would the cows be at?
Well, calving season just ended, so cows and calves are off in another place with some of the younger males mixed in. You know, bison don't reach sexual maturity until about 3, but even then, it's the older animals that get to do most of the breeding.
So what's the rut like?
Oh, it's quite a spectacle. I mean, the bulls are sparring, and there's grunting and snorting and all kinds of posturing and some incredible displays of dominance out there.
You know, I guess it's pretty amazing to see 2 bulls sparring at each other.
Yeah, you can almost feel the ground shake. But the cows, too, can put on quite a display when they're trying to protect their calves. They'll circle around them in order to try to ward off an oncoming predator.
You know, these are really some amazing animals, aren't they? So what are those birds doing? Getting a free ride?
Well, in a way, but they're also getting a good meal. They're picking insects out of the bison's fur.
Look at the size of these guys.
Pretty impressive the way they can just get up from lying down on their sides, isn't it?
Wow, look at those 2. Are they fighting or are they playing?
Well, hard to tell at this point. It's a little early for the rut. Maybe they're just practicing. Brian, do you hear that snorting? Now that's a display of dominance.
So why are they getting down and rolling like that?
We call it wallowing.
What's wallowing?
Well, they're rolling in the dirt from side to side, but you notice they aren't able to go all the way over because of their hump. But they're coating their body in that dirt in order to make it more impervious to insects and parasites.
I guess the days of the bison roaming free across the West are pretty much over.
Probably so. Yellowstone Park is really committed to maintaining a herd of wild, free-roaming bison within the park's boundaries. But in order for bison to roam freely outside the park, we need a lot more critical habitat.
What, 2.2 million acres isn't enough?
Well, it's not 2.2 million acres of grasslands, and that's all they eat. Even if we did have enough critical habitat, though, we're not at the point where humans and bison can coexist peacefully. But one thing is for sure, Brian, that if it wasn't for Yellowstone and what it represents, we wouldn't be out here sitting in this valley today, because these bison would just be a memory rather than an experience.
By the end of the 19th century, there were more bison in the Bronx Zoo than there were in the wild. Though never again will you see the vast herds that stretched from horizon to horizon. It's nice to know that this American icon is living free here in Yellowstone. I'd like to thank Nancy for an unforgettable hike and a closer look at the life of the bison. We're going to keep watching this herd, but we'll see you on the next Trailside. Your tent is your home away from home. To maximize your comfort, use a ground cloth or tent footprint for added insulation and moisture control. When using a ground cloth, you always want to tuck the edges underneath the tent. It keeps the rainwater from going between the cloth and the tent floor. And don't forget, make sure your tent stays put by staking it down.
To order home videos of this or any other Trailside program, or to order a Trailside guidebook, call 1-800-TRAILSIDE.
Trailside is brought to you by Chevy Trucks, right at home in the wild.